immune systems stand at the ready to fight off disease. Well, that's important. But what happens when we have a traitor and they turn on our own bodies instead? Well, we call that an autoimmune disease, and there are a bunch of them lurking around. They can wreak havoc on your body and make you, and sometimes even your doctor, think you're crazy. You're listening to Healthy Looks Great on You, a lifestyle medicine podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Vicki Petz Casper. For 2 decades, I practiced as a board-certified obstetrician-gynecologist, navigating the complex world of women's health. But life took an unexpected turn when my own health failed. Emerging on the other side, I discovered the transformative power of lifestyle medicine. Now, I'm on a mission to share its incredible benefits with you. So buckle up, because we are going on a journey to our very own mini medical school, where you will learn how lifestyle medicine can help prevent, treat, and sometimes even reverse disease. This is episode 125, Autoimmune Diseases. The symptoms are real. Do you have a bunch of weird symptoms and no one can figure out why? Maybe your immune system turned on you and can't tell the difference between your own body and some foreign invader. No one exactly knows why the immune system gets turned on this way, but I can tell you with certainty that even if no one believes you, autoimmune diseases are real. They are a reality for about 8 million people in the United States. Are you one of them? I am. In fact, autoimmune diseases run in my family. It's a real thing, and I'll tell you the story in a bit, but let's make sure we understand some basics first. I'm going to assume you've already completed your homework and jump right into mini medical school today. It's always good to start with a definition. First, let's break down the word. Auto means self, and immune refers to our body's response against something it recognizes as a harmful invader. So when you have an autoimmune disease, your body has maladapted and recognizes your own tissues as a threat. The immune system fights its battles with antibodies against antigens. All this anti puts us at war with our very own selves. And for those of us affected, we say, we're the only ones strong enough to kick our own butt. And trust me, autoimmune diseases can kick you to the curb. There are lots of different types, and they can cause a variety of symptoms that range from annoying to debilitating. There isn't an organ or system in the body that isn't vulnerable to this kind of self-sabotage. In fact, there are over 100 known autoimmune diseases, and that doesn't even count those that are sort of vague and undefined. They can cause specific symptoms or more generalized things like pain, fatigue, rashes, nausea, headaches, dizziness, and so on. As much as my autoimmune disease turned my whole world upside down, I'm kind of glad it had a name. I'll share my story with you, but I'll go ahead and tell you that invisible illnesses like mine aren't always seen by others. So, before you share those memes that chastise dirty, rotten people who don't return their shopping carts in the parking lot, consider they may have an invisible illness, an autoimmune disease that you can't see. Now, I know I am overly sensitive about this, but I remember feeling incredibly judged when I couldn't make it to the cart corral. Can we just show a little grace? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me mention a few things to see if any of this rings a bell. Things like lupus, thyroiditis, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, and even type 1 diabetes is thought to be autoimmune. Women are more likely to be affected by men. Both asthma and allergies are considered to be autoimmune, but it's nothing to sneeze at. In women, autoimmune diseases are one of the top 10 causes of death in any age group. And overall, 1 in 15 people are affected by autoimmune disease in the United States. And symptoms can be grouped by organ system. Those that affects the joints and muscles can cause pain, stiffness, inflammation, and swelling. My autoimmune disease is neuromuscular, but it doesn't cause pain, just weakness. Those that affect the GI tract cause bloating, constipation, belly pain, reflux, nausea, and even bloody stools. Certain autoimmune diseases that affect the gut might make you sensitive to certain foods, like celiac disease that causes incredible sensitivity to gluten, and alpha-gal that causes a full-blown allergic reaction to beef. Many autoimmune diseases affect the skin. You see commercials now for the drugs that are available to treat them, and it's more than just an itchy rash, but things like psoriasis, dermatitis, and eczema. Vitiligo causes depigmentation and creates these big white patches on skin, and it's more visible in dark-skinned people. Sjogren's syndrome causes dry eyes, dry mouth, dry skin. People with lupus can get a butterfly rash that's in the shape of wings right across the face. Alopecia is an autoimmune condition that causes hair loss. And I'm not talking about the drain being full after you shampoo your hair. I'm talking about total baldness. Those that affect the nervous system are often a little harder to pin down, but they can cause things like dizziness and lightheadedness, headache, anxiety, depression, brain fog, blurred vision, insomnia, and numbness and tingling. My autoimmune disorder is neuromuscular, and it affects the communication between the nerves and the muscles. Then there's this big bucket of nonspecific stuff like generalized achiness and fatigue. Some people even have fever and swollen lymph nodes. Weight can be affected dramatically with either weight loss or weight gain, and chest pain and rapid heartbeat can be especially frightening, and so can shortness of breath. Our immune systems are crucial to protect us from infection and injury. The immune response of white blood cells like T cells and B cells are designed for a search and destroy missions. I guess sometimes they just get confused and lock in on the wrong target. There is supposed to be a regulatory mechanism that coordinates the overall strategy. And it's thought that some autoimmune responses are initially triggered by certain infections and environmental offending agents. But like a pesky little brother, they don't know when to stop, and they just keep pounding long after the actual enemy is gone. And that causes a lot of collateral damage. The gut microbiome is now being recognized as a big contributor to the development of autoimmune disease. The GI tract normally contains trillions of microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, and fungus. An even bigger organ system is the skin, and it's perfectly normal for these organisms to live there. As long as everybody is getting along, all systems run smoothly. But what happens when the balance gets tipped? Well, lots of things, but one of them can be an autoimmune response. Let me tell you my story. In May of 2014, I noticed some weird symptoms. My eyelids felt heavy, and by the end of the day, I couldn't even hold them open, and I wasn't sleepy. And I could see better if I closed one eye, and I noticed that my right eyebrow lived way up on my forehead. It looked like a caterpillar was on my face. And without much delay, a doctor told me that I probably had ocular myasthenia gravis. Ocular means eyes. But what worried me is that 85% of the time, ocular myasthenia gravis progresses to generalized myasthenia gravis. And that is exactly what happened 10 years ago this month. Side note, June is also Myasthenia Gravis Awareness Month, so I chose the right month to develop a very wrong disease. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disease that causes the body to make antibodies to the chemical signal from the nerves that tells the muscles to contract. So it's literally a communication problem. As the neurotransmitter gets bound up by antibodies and used up by the muscles, there's nothing left. And the result is what we call fatigable weakness. I like to think of it like a car with a tank full of gas. You can drive until you run out, and you'll burn more gas if you're going up hills. But when it's out, you're stranded. So this ability to go and move is what most people saw, including the doctors that took care of me when I was in the hospital. But the truth is, if they would have just come back later, after I used my arms, they would see me limp as a rag doll. And if you know me at all, you know I usually have enough energy to get on my own nerves. I felt like I was losing my mind when one of my doctors thought I was faking, and that certainly didn't help. I have faked being well, but I have never faked being sick. And I think a lot of people with autoimmune diseases can relate to that. So back to the grocery store parking lot for an illustration. I could only use my arms to drive for about 5 to 10 minutes. That got me to the pharmacy to pick up the 22 pills I swallowed every day. But the grocery store was a particular challenge. After the first year, if I was having a good day, I could park pretty close to the door and get into the store and get a few things. But I couldn't make it all the way around the store or sometimes even down the whole aisle without needing to sit and rest. And it was slow going because I had to conserve my strength. But I'm always an optimist, so I tried. Then the task of getting back to my car in the parking lot was overwhelming. And if I could make it, I really didn't have anything left to get that buggy back. What a jerk, huh? Sorry, it's still a sore spot for me. But listen, autoimmune diseases can be so frustrating. So, do we know what causes them and can we prevent them? Let's discuss cause first, then we'll move on to prevention. And like I mentioned before, there is a genetic component. And while I'm very thankful that no one else in my family has myasthenia gravis, we've got some diseases you've heard of and some you may not have. Things like asthma, eczema, and idiopathic thrombocytopenia purpura. The precise cause of autoimmune disease is largely unknown, but they've been around for a long time. Myasthenia gravis was first described in the 1800s, and it was fatal back then most of the time. Fortunately, by the time I developed it 10 years ago, there were new treatments. I took prednisone, powerful immunosuppressants, and I got an infusion of intravenous immunoglobulin every 3 weeks for 5 years. IVIG is made from the plasma of about 10 to 20,000 donors. And until about 2 or 3 years ago, you probably never heard about myasthenia gravis unless you knew me. But now there are specific treatments, and they're advertised on TV all the time. Some medications can cause an autoimmune response. Common things like blood pressure medications, statins for high cholesterol, and especially antibiotics. And that's why doctors try and talk you out of an antibiotic when you don't need it. It disrupts the healthy microbiome in the gut. Of course, if you need any of these medications, take them. But don't forget, antibiotics do not treat viral infections. So throw away all of those leftovers in your medicine cabinet. On the other hand, infections can incite an autoimmune response too, and so can exposure to certain toxins. Other risk factors are smoking, obesity, and just being female. And here's a bonus. If you have an autoimmune disease, you're at risk for developing another one. Seriously, it's better to collect refrigerator magnets than autoimmune diseases. But once that snowball is rolling, it accumulates more and more. And look, it's not your fault. I remember when I was so sick I couldn't walk, and people would ask me if I thought it was caused by stress. And somehow that made me feel responsible. But for prevention, it is recommended that you maintain a healthy lifestyle. Avoid smoking, processed foods, and of course any exposure to toxins. Exercise regularly and maintain physical fitness. And eat a healthy diet. Whole grains, fruits, and vegetables will enhance the gut microbiome. And the key is fiber. F-I-B-E-R, fiber, fiber. Eat more fiber. It's not only good for your GI tract and your immune system, but also for maintaining healthy weight. In fact, I'll have an upcoming episode dedicated entirely to gut health. But for now, remember, fiber, fiber, fiber. It helps keep the gut bacteria on the right side of the lining of the gut because when that gets interrupted, the lining can actually leak. And that's how they think an immune and inflammatory response are triggered. It's supposed to be there, but it crosses the line when you have a leaky gut. It's a big area of research right now, and it's considered to be a game changer. Another thing that has a profound impact on the immune system is sleep. Sleep is critical to immune function. During sleep, cytokines are released. Those are really important in fighting infection and producing inflammation, as well as the stress response. If you don't get enough sleep, then cytokine production is affected as well as healthy antibody production. But hold up, Sleeping Beauty. Too much sleep isn't good either, and quality matters. Sleep deprivation increases inflammation and the risk for all kinds of health issues like heart disease, high blood pressure, and type 2 diabetes, as well as obesity. Think of sleep as nighttime repair of cell injury. And when you don't get enough, the work doesn't get done. Like if you owned a business and the nighttime cleaning crew just didn't show up, then when you got there the next morning, your building would still be dirty. Without that nighttime relaxation of blood vessels and that subsequent drop in blood pressure, inflammation can remain active. In fact, even one night of lost sleep can cause damage. So imagine what being an obstetrician does to the body, delivering those precious newborn babies at all hours of the night. Other things like obesity also increase inflammation, and so does smoking. And let's be honest, stress does too. People with stress-related disorders are more likely to develop autoimmune diseases. And stress is a complicated thing, and it's not all bad. Our bodies make cortisol, and when it's released in spurts, that actually promotes healthy immune function and cleans up some of that inflammation. But chronic stress leads to chronic inflammation, and that decreases all the infection-fighting lymphocytes in your body, and that makes you more prone to get things like a cold or a fever blister. And high stress over a long period of time just overworks every system in your body, including the all-important immune system, which is designed to protect you, but can also try to kill you. Some people worry that vaccines might cause autoimmune diseases, but there's plenty of evidence to show the benefits far outweigh the risk. But let's move quickly along and talk about diagnosing and treating autoimmune diseases. The most definitive tests are the identification of specific autoantibodies. But that certainly isn't the end all. In my case, I have what is called seronegative myasthenia gravis, meaning the acetylcholinesterase antibodies were not detected in my blood. And that just makes diagnosing the problem even more challenging. And that's not uncommon with autoimmune diseases. So be your own advocate and be specific when discussing symptoms with your doctor. And don't forget your family history, since autoimmune diseases tend to run in families. Some antibody tests are really specific and others are general, but still, it's sometimes helpful. Things like a complete blood count or an anti-nuclear antibody test, commonly known as ANA, or an erythrocyte sedimentation rate, which is a measure of inflammation referred to as the ESR. Once you have a diagnosis, there might be a specific treatment, but usually there isn't a cure. So the goal is to manage your symptoms. Common treatments suppress the immune system or, ironically, give it a boost to settle it down. Here's the deal. Having an autoimmune disease can be life-altering for both you and your family. Fatigue can keep you from doing what you need to do. Coupled with difficulty sleeping or even thinking, depression and anxiety are also common. So it's especially important for you to take optimal care of your body, soul, and mind. Specific lifestyle medicine interventions can help you manage your symptoms. Balance rest and activity, and watch out for temperature fluctuations. A lot of autoimmune disorders get worse with temperature, either hot, cold, and even humid. And stress always makes it worse. If you have an autoimmune disease, it's important to get the education, support, and advocacy you need. Connect with others. Look for Facebook groups or websites that are dedicated to your specific condition. When I was serving as the support person for people with myasthenia gravis in Arkansas, I always said, "Welcome to the club nobody wants to be in." But all clubs are more fun if you've got someone to share with. And do it in a positive way. Find groups that don't just moan and complain and drag you down. Find groups that are fun and give you hope and inspiration. Take proper care of yourself to maximize your health, because healthy looks great on you. The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not considered to be a substitute for medical advice. You should continue to follow up with your physician or healthcare provider and take medication as prescribed. Though the information in this podcast is evidence-based, new research may develop and recommendations may change.